It's honestly really hard to believe that it's been a year since I first premiered Fragments. So, I remember sitting here at my desk a year ago, premiering episode 1 of this series. This little 3.5-minute animation I'd made about Kiara and Sabre being put in a Steve universe by Origin Steve. It feels just like yesterday, honestly, but as you can tell, it's been a year. And first of all, okay, before I even say anything else, thank you to all of you who have stuck around and watched this series since forever, honestly. Because your support for this really means a lot to me, and it really makes working on this series more worthwhile. And since today is the 1-year anniversary of this series, I figured I would kind of talk about like how this series became what it was. Because it wasn't always what you see it as today. It used to be completely different. And the story of how this series started, many people will probably believe started in 2023, because I began animating this back in February. But it actually goes back a lot further than that, to late 2021, believe it or not. Because this is when I had created some of the first characters, and actually most prominent characters, in Fragments. It started with Clover, actually. He was the first character from the current Fragment series that I had ever created. I know, hard to believe. You think it'd be a Kiara, but it's not. Then I created Sky and Rusty and Cosmic. And their concept has changed so much since then, because it's been 3 years, but like the core of who they were remained the same. But for a long time, these little OCs I'd had for Rainbow Quest, this is all they were. They were just OCs. And then I began 2022 came around. It was like May of 2022. And I had really gotten into Sabre's old Assassin's Creed series from like 8 years ago now, I think? I don't know. But I began work on a book on Wattpad called Altaria. It was, as you know, based around Sabre's old Assassin's Creed roleplay. But it was set through the perspective of a different character. And that is where I created Kiara. Because if you've watched that series, you know there's a bunch of plot holes and stuff, and I kind of created Kiara to fix those plot holes. But as I began to write with her and really develop her story, I actually began to really like her character. And like, she was one of my favorites I'd ever made. And I was also big on Steve's stuff later on down that year. And that's when I began to get ideas, because Steve's stuff has stuck with me for a pretty long time. So I got one idea in November of that year. What if Kiara was in a Steve series? And the thing is, originally this was meant to be just another story on Wattpad. It wasn't meant to be anything too big, too special. It wasn't even meant to be a series. And it's actually originally supposed to be set in Steve Legends. Yeah, Kiara and Steve Legends. Sounds hard to believe, I know, but that was what the idea used to be, and I still have the old drafts of that. And the story actually was called Fragments, but not for the same reason. Like, the thing was, Kiara actually was never meant to lose her memories in that original version of the story. She was just there. It was just a what if of a human being in Steve Legends. Because there weren't any during that time. Let's call it the judge. But he wasn't really human. But it was still, that was the idea, and it was eventually, like, I kind of grew out of the idea. It kind of just, like, grew and developed into its own universe. So I liked the idea of the elites, the whole system from Steve Legends, so I kept that, but I wanted to create different characters, different elites. And I actually used Rusty and Sky and Clover and Cosmic for that. And I actually didn't create Cypher as a character until around the time Fragments first came out. He wasn't meant to exist, but he does now, and I don't regret making him. But Kiara was also meant to work with them and stuff, because that part has never changed. But it was just... it was interesting how that first came to be. And I also began to work on the idea of the darkness, like this whole world, not only like existing the way it did peacefully, well actually it was never peaceful, but it sounds like every other typical story with the darkness being the main villain and stuff, but I created the mutants as a way of being a bit different, you could say. Because the mutants, as you can tell, are like a very unique concept of darkness, where they're specialized, where they're meant to be almost exact opposites of the chromatic color. Which was always a fun idea to play with, which is... I love the mutants. It's one of my favorite concepts. But it's also, I guess, worth noting that while I was doing this, I had literally no clue that fan series ever existed. So, around this time it was like February 2023, and I began to work on Fragments, animating it and stuff. And I was really just scared to do this, because I was kind of scared the Sabre would see it and tell me not to take it down, because it'd be copying his series, be copying Rainbow Quest and Steve Legends and Twisted Rainbow and all that, but I still kept doing it. And I was working on this for like 4 months because of school, but it was around, I remember this pretty clearly, it was like late May, early June, when I began to see and I found Ruined Reality. And that actually was the first fan series I had ever watched. And I actually really liked it, and I soon found Legend of the Balancers and Bedrock Rising, thanks to my friend Rainbow, because honestly, if she hadn't suggested those to me, I probably never have seen them. Or maybe I would have at a later time, but that's kind of what gave me the confidence to keep working on this series. But after I published episode 1, I kind of began to realize animating this entire series by myself, a beginner animator, would be really, really difficult to do. So, a few weeks later after I published the episode, I actually opened applications for a recording team. Because at that point, it seemed like it'd be a bit easier to work on this with a team and actually make it a roleplay series. Once episode 1 had left off at a point where it'd be possible to, create a roleplay series instead, based off that episode. So, since the series was only 1 episode in, things really weren't going too well with applications. Because I only had one of my friends on the team. They're not there now, but that was the entire team at one point in time. But eventually, things changed when I got to meet one of the more known creators in this community. Which, I know this is a small community, but at the time it was somewhat of a big deal to me. But this creator, you all know him as Diamond or Diamond's Fantasy. And if we're gonna be honest, if it weren't for him applying for the team and the one stream I got to meet him during, this series really wouldn't have been possible, because he brought people from his own team to help with this series. So I really owe the success of Fragments to him, if anything. And honestly, working on this series has been probably one of the most chaotic times of my life, but also one of the most fun times because of this whole team that I've been working with. And of course it's grown a bit since, well, the day everyone first joined, or at least most people first joined, but working on this series has been really fun because of them. And I really wouldn't trade this for anything else. And I really don't regret making this series at all. I would not trade this for anything. It's a bit stressful, yes, sometimes, but that's just part of being a content creator, especially when you do the things that I do. But honestly, I really want to give a big thank you to the team for helping make this series possible too, and helping out with the acting and, you know, making recording actually really fun. Because I really do like working with all of you. You guys make this fun. And I also want to give a big thank you to all of you who have watched Fragments up to this point. It's always really fun to see you guys react to all these little things that are been thrown into the story, all these little twists and surprises. And it's really you guys who give me the motivation to work on this, because all you guys keep watching and liking and commenting, just generally supporting this series, and I really do appreciate it. And I'm gonna be honest, it's kind of surreal to me to see people actually like these little characters that I've created, these little silly little characters that are just started off as gacha OCs, and they've been sitting in my phone for 3 years. But I never thought they'd be used in a series like this, and I really wouldn't expect people to like them as much as they do. So, really, just thank you to all of you who've been watching the series up to this point, and liking and supporting. We're not as far along as I thought we'd be. I thought we'd be on season 2 by now, but that's just part of what happens, I guess. But I cannot wait to see your reactions to today's episode, because it's not going to be one you'd expect to happen. Well, kind of. You can take a guess what happens from the thumbnail, but in the title. But I will see you guys there, and again, thank you for watching, and yeah, I'll see you in episode 16 comes out. See ya!